Hey squad, welcome back to Prepping with Sarge. This is the second of a three-part series on food independence and food self-sufficiency. So if you did not see the first part, don't worry, you can watch it afterwards. It was basically the six plus bonus one skill of skills that people need to have if they want to be completely food independent, completely food self-sufficient. Now I know this sounds really, and we'll go ahead and we'll put that up here and we'll throw that in the end screen too. So if you don't get those cards pop up, I know depending on how people watch it, sometimes you don't. Just go ahead and check in my recent videos. It should be in there. So I know this sounds really unrealistic, you know, in the era of like where we can just go down to the grocery store and get as much food as you want. You can order your DoorDash, you can order your Uber Eats and all those other crazy things. But really not that long ago in human history, 250 years ago or so, most people would have needed to know these skills or they basically would have starved, right? You know, it's not unrealistic for a person to master all the skills that we're going to be talking about. So today we're going to be talking about specifically food preservation skills. I think you're going to enjoy this one, and you want to at least have some of these, if not all of them, mastered if you're going to be a prepper or a homesteader or a survivalist. Stay with me now. All right, thanks for staying with me. So this is the 7 skills for food preservation that all preppers, homesteaders, and survivalists should know. So the first one that I want to talk about is, of course, canning. Now, canning is a way that you can basically take the food from your garden and in your hunting and your fishing too, and basically you're going to either water bath can them or pressure can them. Now that really depends on the acidity of what you're canning. A lot of stuff you can get away with, like fruits and tomatoes and tomato sauces, things like that, and jams and jellies, you can get away with just doing a water bath canning. But if you're gonna get serious about it, you may wanna decide to get a pressure canner as well. I'll go ahead and link some stuff in Amazon if I can find it in the description down below. So this is number 1. It's not my favorite way of preserving food, but when you can stuff and you put it in mason jars or ball jars, it's gonna stay good for a very long time, years, and it's gonna taste better than most of that food, that store-bought canned goods, because it's not going to have all those preservatives and other crap that they stick in it. So canning is usually a very long, lengthy process. It can be an all-day affair. It can be fun, especially if you do it with a partner or a friend. But yeah, canning is number 1, and it's intimidating to a lot of people, but get yourself a good book, the ball canning guide, I think is what it's called. And again, if I can find that, I'll link that down below in the description as well. Is a good one to get you started. Really, if you follow the instructions, there's nothing to fear. You're gonna be looking for a full seal on your glass jars with the lids, and if you do that, you're good to go. And you'll know because you'll hear like a little ping. It's like a ping. It's like a ping sound that you get when the jar seals correctly and you've gotten all the air out of it, or most of the air out of it. All right, number 2 is freeze drying. Freeze drying is the number 2 recommended, Sarge recommended. It's not necessarily in any order. Freeze drying is the number 2 recommended method or skill that you want to be able to have to do some long-term food preservation, right? So the problem here is that freeze drying equipment tends to be very, very pricey. I myself do not have one. It's on my wish list for someday, maybe. When you freeze dry stuff, you actually take that food and you're taking all the moisture out of it, and then you're sealing it in oxygen, very little, in some type of container, often Mylar, but it can be jars as well. You're sealing it in a way that most of the oxygen has been taken out as well. So that's going to basically eliminate the two of the ways that food breaks down. So it's going to stay good for a very, very long time. And of course, freeze-dried food, I like the texture of it, just like plain right out of the package. It actually has got kind of an interesting, like if you ever had astronaut ice cream, that's basically what that is. And it's kind of a fun project. You can do all kinds of cool things with candy. In fact, I did a video a while ago where my friend, the Preparedness guy, had sent me some freeze-dried candy, which was just phenomenal. It tasted really good. So freeze drying number 2, I will go ahead and put a link for any equipment that I can find down below for that. All right, number 3. The number 3 method of food preservation as recommended by yours truly, Sarge, is my favorite way, and I'll explain why in just a second, which is dehydrating, just regular dehydrating. Now, dehydrating can be done with probably the cheapest of equipment. In fact, you can do some dehydrating without any equipment at all, as long as you've got an oven in your house or some paper towels. I've done a bunch of videos about this. We'll go ahead and link one of those up here so you can check that out. And I'll also link down in the description down below the dehydrator that I actually use and have been using for over 13 years now. Which is really, it was very affordable and it's held up really well. So why do I like dehydrating? It is the easiest, it is the cheapest to get started on. It is basically you set stuff and you go. Unlike canning, where you're kind of working all day long to preserve your food, with dehydrating, I basically put it in my dehydrator and then I'm on to another project. And then at the end of the day or the next day, it's good to go and I can can it up, or however I'm gonna store that, which is the storage part is actually going to be more in part 3 of this series. By the way, if you're enjoying this series so far, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. We're getting close to our 5,000 subscriber giveaway. You want to have that bell notification turned on so you don't miss that. All right, number 4 is pickling. Now, of course, some of you who are experienced with canning, you are probably already aware that pickling can be done in combination with canning. But if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to seal it up for years and years of storage, just pickling without sealing it in your water bath canner will still allow you several months of keeping those veggies preserved by, you can do this with all kinds of different things, asparagus, pickled beans, pickled peppers, and of course pickled cucumbers, right? Like there's all kinds of different ways, that pickled eggs even, right? So basically it's just using vinegar. Tons of videos on this on the internet, tons of guides on blogs and things like that. So very, very easy to learn, minimal costs at startup, and you can preserve a lot of food this way and it'll stay good for months. All right, number 5 is fermenting. Fermenting is the process of preserving food through controlled microbial action. Yeah, that's a complicated way of saying it. So, but it's better if I explain it through examples. Examples of this would be like kimchi, sauerkraut, and there's other ways to do this with like cheeses, and sourdough bread is an example of using this. There's different ways to do this. So this one gets really complex and it would probably require a whole nother video. But if you want to get into this one, fermenting is a great way to preserve food. Not only that, the health benefits of fermented food are really well documented, really well researched, especially for gut bacteria and things like that. So you definitely want to consider this as one of your options. It's also low cost, and I think once you've got it, it's pretty easy to remember. So fermenting is my number 5 way of food preservation that preppers, survivalists, and homesteaders ought to consider learning. All right, the number 6 method of food preservation that Old Sarge is going to recommend for you is, of course, pemmican. Now, if you're not familiar with pemmican, I'm going to recommend that you do go ahead and watch a few videos before you attempt it on your own. But pemmican is the process of preserving meat, proteins, through a combination of combining it with its fats and sometimes with berries or other fruits to enhance the flavor. Tends to last up to 5 years if you've done it correctly. And it's been around for a really long time. It's a skill that humans have been doing to preserve proteins and meats for a very long time. So it's definitely one that you can learn if you put your mind to it. All right, before I get into the last one, number 7, what I want to say is thank you so much if you're still with me, if you stayed to the very end. You are the reason why I do these videos, and I really, really do appreciate you. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. If you've got anything of value out of this, please consider giving me a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments down below. Or if you think this was a complete waste of your time, go ahead and give me a thumbs down. Let me know that as well. I always appreciate the feedback. All right, number 7, the last food preservation skill that Old Sarge is going to recommend for you is, of course, curing. Now, curing is the process of preserving proteins and meats with salt and vinegar and sometimes other spices as well. If you've ever had country ham, especially during holidays, you've had cured meat. It's very old and it's safe to eat if done correctly. So this is one that you can learn, and one that you can learn as a good way to start with is biltong, B-I-L-T-O-N-G, which is a form of meat, which is a form of protein curing that came out of South Africa. Now, there's a lot of misconceptions about this. A lot of people out there, there's a myth that it's illegal to make your own biltong. As far as I can tell from all my research, that's not true. However, there is restrictions on importing biltong from South Africa, which is where this recipe probably originated from. Has to do with differences in food preservation techniques. But as far as I know, as far as I can tell in my research, if you know otherwise, let me know down in the description with a source. As far as I know, you can make your own, and there's plenty of recipes out there. There's plenty of videos out there. I know Jack Spirko from the Survival podcast talked about this a long time ago. Biltong is a very easy way to get started, and biltong can last a very, very long time. It's one of the easiest ways to learn how to do protein meat curing, all right? Folks, thank you so much for staying with me to the very end. Don't forget to check in the description down below for some links to products that I think will help you in your food preservation journey. And stay tuned next week for the conclusion of this 3-part series. And again, remember, if you didn't see the first part, go ahead and check in the end cards, or if it's not there because you're viewing on a form that doesn't, if you're viewing on a device that doesn't allow you to see end cards, then just go ahead and see my recent videos. It should be there. Keep planting your seeds, keep stacking your silver. This is Prepping with Sarge.